Overwhelm is probably one of the most common things people say to us. I'm overwhelmed. It feels like we haven't got time to do anything. It feels like we haven't got enough space in our life to do anything. It feels like our to-do list is never ending. We're constantly chasing our tail. I completely get it. It can be the biggest blocker to getting going. We look at trying to transform an area of our life, physically, mentally, emotionally, financially. We think of all the things we have to do, all the things we could do. That becomes overwhelming. So how can we deal with overwhelm? Well, there's loads of ways, but this is a really simple way to look at it and probably get some practical things you can think about to do. So if we look at it simplistically, overwhelm is really when your demands, that's what that D is, outweighs your capacity to deal with it. And so when our capacity is only this big over here and our demands are this big, then that gap here becomes overwhelm. That's the overflow. And so we got a simple kind of process to reduce overwhelm. We either increase our capacity to deal with the demands of our life, or we reduce the demands, or ideally, we do a mixture of both. Now, the biggest mistake you can make that I've seen with thousands of people we work with is our number one method for reducing overwhelm is just get the stuff done. So just reduce these demands, like just bring them down, keep reducing them, reducing them, reducing them. Not so much left to do now. Brilliant. I feel less overwhelmed. The only trouble I see with that is, for the most part, as we go about our day and we reduce these demands, a lot of our demands are the same every day. So we wake up the next day and we're like, right, brilliant, let's go. And all these demands have returned. And then we're overwhelmed again. And then once we're overwhelmed again, we have to do the same thing. I'm just going to keep reducing my demands constantly. Let me draw that back. And that cycle is what makes us burnt out, exhausted. And over time, it reduces our own capacity. And so our capacity is getting smaller as we go. It's reducing. So we can't just say, oh, you're overwhelmed because you're underdoing. That's the one thing people say in cliche personal development. You're underwhelmed because you're underdoing. Most people are overwhelmed and overdoing. You're still doing loads of stuff. And so that's one way of doing it. I've never found it that effective with people or myself. So the step is, what can we do? Well, we start with increasing capacity, number one. And what capacity is there? There's time capacity. If you could make more time in your life, your capacity would go up. Simple as that. That's the number one thing we feel we haven't got, right? The second thing is our energetic capacity. We know, and you know, that when you feel good, you have more capacity to deal with the demands in your life. If you're underslept, hungry, you're tired, a bit burnt out, you're like, oh man, I haven't got the energy to go about my day. You've reduced your capacity, right? By having less energy. And then there's mental capacity. You only have so much mental space, okay? Something called cognitive load. You only have so much space. Think of your phone. You have so much data. You have so much space, storage space on your phone. All right. Now, if we're carrying loads of information around with us mentally, lots of things on our mind, decisions we haven't made, lots of stuff we've got to do. Well, got to be at this appointment, got to be there. If we use our brain to store all this information, our mental capacity becomes maxed out. And that means it reduces our capacity to think and act and make decisions. So we have to reduce what we would call mental load. Your brain is not for storing pointless information. And that's the trouble with the information world. It's for creating, it's for thinking and doing, making things happen. So to increase capacity, we've got to try and find more time. We've got to try and improve our energy. And we've got to try and reduce our mental load so we can increase that. These are three easy, simple wins that you can get after. But of course, the question is, well, how? Now, in this short video, we can't get into the massive amounts of hows. But if you look at energy real quick, I'm a big fan of just three anchors. Three things: a physical thing, a mental thing, and an emotional thing. Can you just plug that in? Because when you're overwhelmed and then you think, I've got to add 500 more habits here. Oh my God, that becomes overwhelming. Your morning routine that somebody tells you on Instagram to do these 10 things, it becomes really overwhelming. It's a source of stress, not a reduction of stress. So what's something physical, mental, and emotional you can do throughout your day? Think of it as making deposits in your energetic bank account. Movement, hydration. It can be meditation. It can just be getting out in nature, a walk on your lunch. Emotionally, it can be doing something for you, something you like doing, 10 minutes for yourself at some point in your day to do what you want to do. It doesn't have to all be meditation and journaling, all that stuff that we teach. It can be 3 anchors like that. But if you're not putting those anchors in, you're going to be in trouble. And what do we say? We always say, well, I'll get through these demands. We don't say demands, but I'll get through all this done, and then I'll find time for my energy stuff, or then I'll find time for me. But that cycle is what keeps us stuck in the trap. At some point, we have to say, what 3 easy, simple, energetic things can I do throughout my day that are going to top up my energy and give me more capacity? We have to start there. That's the first thing. With mental load, right? This is a wonderful idea. How do I increase my mental capacity? You get everything out of your head that's irrelevant. You journal. You use calendars. You do all sorts of things that take everything that's swimming around in your head and you put it somewhere. I'm a big fan when we work with people who have their own jobs or work in offices of kind of AM, afternoon, PM journaling for 5 minutes. Before you go about your day, just get everything written down you need to do, prioritize it, etc., etc. In the afternoon, 5-minute check-in. What is my definition of done for the rest of the day? Like, by the time I finish work, what I want done. And you can use this in anything in your life, but we want to look and think, how can I reduce the mental load I am carrying around all day long? Because overwhelm is probably one of the most common things we all experience at some point. One of the most common things that people get in touch with us about, particularly if you're trying to change something. If you're trying to set some goals, common aims are to improve your mental health, improve your physical health, your financial health, to improve your lifestyle, a relationship. Well, you're going to have to do something new, right? You're going to have to add some different things in, take some things out. But you're going to have to go make some changes, make some stuff happen. That in itself increases overwhelm in many people. There's huge amounts of information out there. It's like, what do I do with all this information? And so overwhelm, the fact that our lives are very demanding, very busy, is a common thing now. And it can really ultimately cause huge issues mentally, physically, and emotionally. So how do we deal with it? Well, if we look at it simply, we can say that overwhelm, sat here right now, is when your demands outweigh your capacity to deal with it. That's what that is right there. The D, the C is your demands are outweighing your capacity to do something about it. And so from that point, you've got 2 options. You say, well, I can either reduce my demands on the left there and reduce it down until, well, now I've got the capacity to deal with this, or you can increase your capacity. So reducing demands, increasing capacity, or a mixture of both is how you reduce overwhelm. It's that simple. When our demands are far greater than our capacity here, that gap is overwhelm. That's the overflow. If you've got 4 hours of work to do and 1 hour to do it in, you're probably going to feel quite overwhelmed. It's like, I haven't got enough time capacity to deal with this. And so day to day, we want to think, how do I increase my capacity or reduce my demands? There's a big mistake I see all the time. One of the common personal development cliches you'll hear is you're overwhelmed because you're underdoing. Basically, it's like you're not doing enough, so you're overwhelmed. Now, that's saying, well, one way to reduce your demands so you're less overwhelmed is to do everything. And so just keep chunking it down throughout the day. It's like, oh, I've done loads of stuff, took loads of action. Now I'm not overwhelmed. From my experience of dealing with people, those demands are daily. And you wake up the next morning with the same amount of capacity, all those demands are refreshed in your life, and you're overwhelmed again. And so we go about it again, thinking, I just got to get through these demands, and then I'll have more time for myself. Then I'll have better energy. And again, the next day it refreshes. And what happens? That cycle leads to burning out, being exhausted, a constant state of overwhelm, constantly on the hamster wheel. So just because it sounds good, overwhelmed because you're underdoing, doesn't mean it's necessarily effective. Yes, you've got to do stuff. You've got a big project, get through it. Why? We're talking about daily overwhelm here. Well, most of our demands are the same things every day for the most part. And so I'm not a big fan of that. Just do it, do more, and you'll reduce overwhelm. I'm a big fan in starting with our clients. Number one, increase capacity. And that's you got time capacity, you got energetic capacity, you got mental capacity. Time is how can I get more structured and get more time? Energy is, you know, for a fact that when you are tired, when you're hungry, when you're not looking after yourself, your capacity to deal with the demands in your life reduces. We know full well that when we are carrying lots of things in our mind, when there's lots of decisions we haven't made, we would call those open loops. When there's these open loops, when you're storing your weekly plan in your head, got to be here, got to be there, trying to remember, your mental capacity is reduced because you've only got so much storage there. And if it's taken up with just mundane things and general things about your life that you could put in a calendar or put somewhere else, you're going to be overwhelmed mentally. You haven't got the capacity. So we want to try and increase time, energy, and mental capacity. And we can cover that in a second. The other thing is, like, when it comes to demands, because we want to reduce demands as well, then for one, it's important to see that a lot of demands are perceived. I'm going to even write that for you. As in, when we're low on capacity and tired, we perceive our day to be harder, right? We perceive everything to be more difficult. So we can reduce our perceived demands by improving our capacity. Also perceived is when we try and think we've got to do everything. Now, I deal with lots of people where they may be the only person in the family, literally, single parents, etc., business owners, whatever it may be. You think, okay, you haven't got a lot of support around you. But often, with a little bit of figuring out, we can say, hey, maybe you're taking on more than you have to in many areas of your life. And we often find with overwhelmed people, you say yes to everything and you help everybody. And then that becomes at your own detriment because now you're trying to do too much. And that's a common thing with overwhelm. We tend to take on more stuff when we're overwhelmed. So we've got to figure out the perceived demands. And the big one with demands is this balance between what is important in my life versus, yep, that looks about right, what is urgent. That says urgent. When we're overwhelmed, we are constantly stuck in urgent. We're very rarely in important. And they're different. Important is what is important to me, what is truly important this week. Now, to have an idea of what's important in our lives, we have to have some kind of goal, we have to have some kind of priorities. And so a lot of this stuff with overwhelm comes down to actually some simple stuff. It's like, number one, what am I working towards? What is my goal? It doesn't have to be your life goal. It can be what is important by the end of this month. What do I want to have happened in my life by the end of January? What are some of the key things that are going on in my life right now? What would the definition of those being done look like? It's simply getting down some kind of goal, some kind of intention. I don't mean I'm going to lose X amount of weight. I mean, looking at my life, what do I need to make happen in January? Because if you don't have a direction, then you can't do the other thing, which is filter based on, okay, if I'm looking at everything in my life right now and I write it down, everything that I've got going on, what is a now thing? Like, what's a today thing? What this needs doing today? What's a like this week thing? Where can I put that? A lot of things I look at with people, it's like, is that need doing today? Well, not really. So why are we trying? Why don't we do that on Friday? Why don't we do that on Thursday? Why are we trying to do it this week? Because we're overwhelmed and it's making everything feel urgent. It's like, okay, what's the next week thing? And what is just a nothing? It's like, I've just got that on my list. I probably don't need to do that. But you can't filter what's important if you don't have a goal because you don't know what's important. And goals aren't just to achieve things. Goals are to help your brain figure out what's important and what's not. And so it's like, hey, can I do a few simple things? Number one, if I want more time capacity, I have to start planning my life. You can't get away from it. It sounds boring, but it is true. If you have a structure for your week and go, here's what I'm doing, here's where it is, not here, but in a calendar, paper, digital, whatever it may be, and you plan your month, your week out in a calendar, you will reduce your mental load and you'll have more capacity. Hands down. If you carry your plans around here, you'll have less mental capacity, more mental load. So we got to plan stuff. Energetically, it's like, how can I top up my accounts? You don't have to have elaborate morning routines and nighttime routines, but you may say, how can I prioritize one thing that ups my physical energy? A lunchtime walk, a morning walk, a gym session, whatever you can do. What one thing can improve my mental energy? That can be engaging in a hobby. It can be meditation. It can be breathing. It can be meeting a friend, going outside. And emotional energy, almost like the stuff that feels good. Mind, physical body, mental, mind, emotional, soul. What feeds your soul? What's something for you? Can you fit some? It's tiny in? They could be 10 minutes each, and you would increase your capacity. And this is as simple as it needs to be. Am I planning? Do I have a goal? Am I doing something each day? Like that's dead simple. And that's 10 minutes. Energetic work can be 10 minutes each throughout your day. Planning is maybe 20 minutes on a Sunday, a Friday, where you just go, I'm just going to plan my week. You have to find a little bit of time to make loads of time. And mental capacity can be as simple as this exercise where you journal down every day. Okay, what's my goal today? What's important today? What have I got to get done? Write down everything on your mind and then start moving it around. Yes, that's a today thing. That's probably a later in the week thing. Put it in your calendar. That's a next week thing. That's not important at all. And the other great question you can ask is, let's move that up. Is this a me thing? Or is this a somebody else thing? Can I get some help? Can I pass that on? Can I ask somebody to help me with that rather than take it all on myself? Now, with that little matrix, you can reduce overwhelm, but you've got to understand it. The mistake you can't keep making is to think if you just keep doing and doing, you'll reduce your demands and then you'll find time and then you'll have more energy and then you'll have more mental capacity. No, you won't. For the most part, you go, I got to find a little bit of that first. A small bit of time to plan, a small bit of time to write down everything on my mind and prioritize it, a small bit of time to move physically, mentally, and emotionally, increase your capacity, reduce your demands at the exact same time, and overwhelm will massively reduce in your life.